It's very good to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you to Global City Media. I may be an expert in the challenges of running. I'm not sure I'm an expert in the solutions or knowing how to effectively run in the 21st century. I think it's a journey that really is just starting. I have obviously more familiarity with the Coty situation than obviously departments in the luxury industry generally. And the Coty journey is an interesting one. I'm going to give a little bit of context because I do think a legal function has to live in its ecosystem. And when you provide services to the business, you have to take the business to some extent as you find it. So a word of background about Coty. Coty, as it's known today, was formed in October of 2016 as a result of the merger between the P&G beauty business and the old Coty business. Coty is a New York Stock Exchange listed company, roughly $9 billion in revenues, 20+ thousand employees with headquarters in New York, Geneva, Paris, and London. Over the last year or so, our journey has been challenged as a company. We doubled the size of the company with the P&G merger, and the integration has not gone as we would have wished, principally related to our supply chain integration. We, in essence, tried to do a 4-year job in 2 years, which produced challenges that are public and that we've addressed publicly. Those challenges did affect our top line, affected all the businesses, including the luxury division, which is the most relevant division here today. I will say the luxury division was able to be particularly resilient in how it addressed those challenges. And for the last public data for Q2 for us ending December 31st, 2018, the luxury division top line grew almost 11% and the bottom line by 40+%. So that was, from a Coty perspective, a very good news. Unfortunately, because of the rest of the business did not do so well, we have had some significant transitions. Those of you who followed us publicly will know that we had CEO, CFO, head of supply chain, and transitions at the head of our consumer beauty division. However, those changes are also an opportunity, and we're in the throes of developing a revised strategic plan. And our 40% shareholder, JAB Holdings, has expressed its confidence in the new management team by being in the process of investing $1.7 billion to increase its ownership stake. So why do I give that background? In addition to the challenging luxury industry, that is a challenging ecosystem internally at Coty that the legal function has to deal with. And so you may ask, how do you deal with that? The first thing I believe in a legal function is all about people, and it's all about the best people. And so how do you go about finding the best people and having the right culture in the legal function? So not only can you support the business in its transitions, but deal with emerging legal issues and actually provide business solutions to the business. We are not in the business of spotting legal issues, in my opinion. We're not in the business of giving legal choices. We're actually in the business of giving a business solution to a problem that happens to have a legal component. And the ultimate judgment in terms of how I look at how the function is doing is how often business folks come to us for business advice. So that is a very challenging standard to achieve, particularly when you have senior management turnover. So what are some of the keys, at least that I think are needed to achieve that? When you want best talent, I think best talent also means diverse talent. We are in a very diverse industry. We are a global company, so we can't just be overweighted with one particular culture, one particular background. I am pleased to say that the Coty legal function is about 80% diverse. We are not adequately diverse across all different metrics. Our diversity comes primarily from gender diversity. But I think it is very important not only to be diverse, but to stand for diversity, so you can attract talent who wants to be part of a diverse team. So we recently have put in place a preferred counsel program. That preferred counsel program had as a key component diversity of our law firms. And we're putting into the engagement letters something I think is a little bit interesting, diversity targets for law firms in terms of how they staff our matters, a reporting requirement that they have to report to us, tailored a little bit to the locality, because you have some laws in some countries which will affect what they can report on. And if they don't meet the level of diversity that is agreed upon, there'll be some consequences. Now, it's kind of hard to figure out what the right consequence would be, but we came up with a couple of options. One was staffing. They would hire diverse interns, associates, who would work on our matters exclusively, and they would pay for that person. Maybe that person would be co-located with us for a period of time, maybe 50-50. Or maybe they would make a donation to an appropriate charity in both our name and the firm's name. So that, I think, generates a very good conversation. I do think law firms tend to be a little bit more challenged on diversity than in-house functions in the luxury industry. Another thing that we did is we signed up to the Diversity and Inclusion Statement by the European General Counsels Association, which looks inward, but also has a very significant component of looking outward to the law firms. I really do believe that if you have to stand for something to get the right talent to join you. The other significant challenge, at least from my perspective, is obviously you want diverse talent, but there are other aspects of talent that are very important. You want, in my view, co-location of talent where the business is, which means in many different geographies. You want a mix of industry expertise and best practices from outside the industry. And you need to have folks with this, in my view, business solutioning culture, which actually means lawyers taking personal risk. At Coty, we believe that the legal function is actually responsible for results. We're not responsible for effort, that's assumed, or a good process, that's assumed, but we're responsible for delivering the right results, the right litigation wins. To do that, you have to have lawyers who are willing to sign up, to take personal risk, to stretch, because I've had many conversations with lawyers about, I can't control the judge. That's exactly correct, you can't control the judge. But the sales folks can't control the competition. But they still get held to account in terms of the sales they achieve. So that means we have to think differently. We have to assume that we're responsible for the outcome, and then we have to understand what do we have to do to achieve the outcome that we need. We have to work harder, we have to strategize, we have to decide when to settle, and we have to manage expectations and team with the business such that the outcome that we achieve is aligned with the key business priorities. A key challenge is also staffing, as I mentioned, around the world. And China, I think, is a particularly different market to staff. You definitely need, sorry, I think there's some interference. It could be me, it's possible. At home, I'm accused all the time of interfering. And so in China, you want to, it's not me. You want to have deep local expertise, but you also, if you're a US public company, need to have people who are aware of US public company standards and practices. And you need to retain them, and the Chinese legal market is highly mobile. So I think when you look around the world to challenging geographies, having a staffing plan is very important, and trying to create the culture that I've described so that folks want to join your function, they want to stay with you because they can think they can make a difference, is a key challenge. And it is particularly challenging when you deliberately seek out diversity and different cultures, to how to bring them together as a high-performing team. The communication approaches in different cultures are very different. I'll often get the question as to what is the Coty culture, or what is the culture in the Coty legal function. And I'll say there isn't a culture, at least not yet. Why? Because I have people literally from across the world sitting in different parts of the world, and there's not one culture in the world, there's not one culture in one country. people often, I use as an analogy when people say, what is the culture of the Coty legal function? I'll say, what is the culture of America? And that kind of depends on if you're in New York, if you're in Atlanta, if you're in San Francisco, the culture will be very different. And I think it's very important to accept people where they come from, not try to change the fundamental culture, but to try to bring a common standard and a common approach to how to practice law. And that, as I mentioned, is really partnering and teaming with the business folks so that the business folks want to come to you. And one example that I'll give, which was from about a year ago, is the Accente case. It is the case where Coty took on the federal German government and Amazon and won in front of the European Court of Justice in order to protect our selective distribution model and to make sure it is valid online. As a luxury company, having selective distribution and being able to control how your products appear online is of critical importance. That was a success that I actually deserve zero credit for. The key decisions were taken by my German litigation team before I joined Coty. The resilience and the courage of that team still impresses me. So that team lost at the trial level against the German federal government, Amazon, kind of two of the biggest heavyweights you can find, appealed, even though they had a bloody nose, and won in front of the European Court of Justice, really for the benefit of the industry. That then allows us to be highly influential, shall we say, in the commercial terms when we deal with online companies. And in particular, for instance, we have recently done a pilot project with Amazon in the UK with Calvin Klein, and that is going very well. But it's going very well in part because we were able to negotiate what we needed to protect the brand image of Calvin Klein online. When you can have that kind of partnership with the business, when your divisional presidents get calls from head of fashion houses and say, thank you for your legal function, doesn't always happen. But that is the kind of resilience and the risk-taking that I think is very important in order to make a difference in the 21st century. Other significant challenges which have been talked about today and will be talked about further are emerging legal issues. And we don't have any particular answers, but I think part of the talk is about the challenges. So the evolving competition landscape, I think China is a key growth area for many companies. The evolving competition landscape in China, they are adopting more of the EU model on competition and RPM, resale price maintenance, and they're merging their antitrust authorities in order to have a super agency. I think those things are very important to focus on, particularly in an economy that's as dynamic as the Chinese economy is, to actually create the right culture of compliance is challenging. And it takes a great deal of training, reminding, and processes in place so that you achieve the outcome you actually need to achieve for the business while still being compliant. Another topic is sustainability, which has been touched on already. That is an increasingly important topic in my view. It does present some challenges from the legal side. One of the areas for me is clean claims, vegan claims, and cruelty-free claims. I abhor greenwashing, and so if we make a claim, it has to be fully substantiated. But in a world that has emerging products and emerging trends where you need to make claims, how do you make sure something is fully substantiated where the standards may be unclear? One of the approaches we've taken, and we've adopted it for one of our brands, principally in America, CoverGirl, is cruelty-free. What we do is we find a very reputable third party who will certify us. We have the Leaping Bunny certification by Cruelty Free International. That then allows us to make the claim that we're certified. So we don't have to create our own standards for being cruelty-free. We find somebody who has high standards, whom is well respected, and then we ally with them, we have them audit us, we get their certification if we earn it, and then we can make legitimate claims that we're so certified. To me, that is a good balance of satisfying the business needs without taking undue risk or kind of being a little bit morally offensive and run the risk of greenwashing. I think there are just two other legal challenges left, at least that I'd want to address today, and then I'm very happy to take questions. Hopefully this won't elicit too many groans, but to be frank, GDPR I think is not easy. When you have multinational companies around the world and you have different regulatory regimes, and America with California is going to be emerging to be almost as challenging, if not more challenging, than GDPR. And you have business people who are used to doing it the way they're doing it, or they're doing it the way they want to do it. And no one else is really talking about GDPR other than the legal function. To be able to partner with the business folks and have them have enough credibility that when you tell them you really need to change your operations, it's not just a paper exercise, you actually have to change how you conduct business, I think is a challenge. I think it's going to be a more important challenge in the year or two to come. I think the regulators will become more aggressive. I think the regulators are giving people a little bit of time to catch up, but I think it is in some respects the quiet before the storm. And then from a Coty legal perspective, the Me Too movement presents some challenges. Our luxury division has very significant licenses, and some of these licenses are associated with individuals. And if an individual has a scandal, we will incur that consequence to some degree as a licensee. Even though we've had nothing to do with that scandal, it can affect the brand. And so one of the things we are starting to think about is how do we mitigate that. You would like to do great diligence on the front end, but sometimes it's not possible when you're in competition to license a brand. You may want to put things in the contract to protect yourself. Again, that may or may not be possible. And then finally, you want to have reactive media statements ready and make sure the business is focused, because you don't know where it's going to come from, but you think at some point you're going to have something that's going to be a problem. And if it's not on a license, it could be on an influencer that is closely associated with one of your brands. So I think that is something that we are focusing on. As I said, we don't actually have answers yet, but I think we are starting to develop thoughts that could be helpful. I hate just standing up here talking for minutes on end. So what I'd love to do is kind of open up to questions. Any question is welcome on any topic, so please feel free. Okay, well with that, let me thank you very much for your attention, and I know you'll have a very enjoyable rest of the day. Thank you.